Today we're going to be making colorful disco balls, but first we have to start out with a perfect circle. So the way that I do this is I point my pinky knuckle while I'm holding the pencil or writing utensil, and then I try and put it in the center of the paper. And then I just slowly turn the paper, and I try and make sure that the only part of my hand that is touching the paper is my pinky knuckle and then the pencil. And you want to press hard enough with your pinky that it doesn't move around when you are moving the paper. So that's how I get my perfect circles. And then what you need to do is you are going to measure little 1/2 inch marks so that you can make 1/2 inch curves. And see, that one wasn't very straight. So for the future ones, I'm going to do more little marks. This way the curves will be more consistent. So all I'm doing is just making 1/2 inch marks, and then I'm just going to go all the way up the circle until I have all of these curves. And you want to make sure they're curved and not straight, because if they are straight, it's not going to appear spherical. It's going to appear flat like a circle. So if you make sure that they're curved, it will give the illusion of it actually being a sphere. So then once you have all of those 1/2 inch marks made into rows, then you are going to make 1/2 inch marks and actually make basically 1/2 inch boxes. And then once you get all of the boxes in one row, just move up, and I'm just basically making lines based off of the dots that I'm making from the ruler. So they don't have to be perfect, and they don't have to line up in a certain way or anything. Just fill the entire disco ball with all of these little 1/2 inch squares. And you really do want them to be square-ish, because if they're not square, they're more rectangular, it is not going to look like actual mirrored tiles on a disco ball. So I'm just making all of these 1/2 inch marks and filling up the entire disco ball. Then I got the primary colors and some white. You can get black if you want as well. And then I'm mixing all of the colors that I want. So I got purple, and I'm going to scoop some red over and some purple over, and I'm going to make red violet. And I'm going to also scoop some purple over and mix it with white, because I want some like pastel colors. That's the kind of vibe that I want to go for this. And so you can use as many colors as you want, but you need to have at least 3 colors. And if you are only doing 3, try and do a darker color, a medium color, and then a lighter color, because then that way it'll give it more of the depth and dimension that is kind of more interesting for these disco balls. And so I'm just mixing all my colors and just kind of experimenting with colors. One of the colors that I tried to mix was this orange color, and I was like, I don't really like that. So I added some more yellow, and then I was like, okay. So I scooped some over, and I was like, I'm going to add some white with that so that it can be kind of like peachy. And then I was like, I don't know. I don't really like that one either. And so I just was experimenting and just kind of adding a little bit more red, a little bit more yellow, making a green, making a yellow green, making a teal, adding white to those so that they can be a little bit lighter. And I was kind of going for all of the colors of the rainbow kind of look, but more pastel vibes. So then now what I'm doing is I'm just filling in random boxes, but I did know that I wanted to have the cool colors like blue, yellow, and green. Well, I guess yellow is not a cool color, but I wanted the colors of the blues and the greens and the teals to be on the left side. And then I wanted to kind of go in rainbow order to the right side where it will end in purple. So over on this side, like I said, I'm doing the greens. I'm going to add the blue in there as well. And then I will go yellow and the little peachy colors and orange, and then the pinks, and then the purples. And then that's how I had it planned out in my head. And then as I'm starting and doing this, I was just making sure that the colors were kind of, given some spaces. I wasn't clumping up a bunch of colors next to each other. I was putting spaces in between them and putting similar colors next to each other. But also, if you notice, like the blue kind of is spread apart from like multiple rows, like over multiple rows. And the way that I'm painting these squares is I'm trying to use the flat brush, and I'm going from all angles so that the corners of the brush can get into the corners of the squares. And so I just did that over and over and over again, mixed the colors that I really wanted, and I realized, you know what? I want a lighter yellow. I'm going to mix yellow in with this. And bear with me on this part. It does look a little clunky right here where I'm mixing the yellows together because the yellows are very similar colors. It wasn't as noticeable of a difference as I was hoping. And it kind of just goes from, the greens straight to yellows, and it looks really clunky. But I promise it does get better. And so then now I'm mixing in the peachy orangish colors. And again, I'm trying to leave those spaces so that there are spaces for the other colors, because I don't want them to be rows where it's just like each color is just its own designated row or section. I want them to kind of intermingle and kind of mix together. So that's the vibe I was going for with that. I mean, if you wanted to, you could do rows, but I do feel like if you have it in rows where they're all the same, you might lose the tiles that you drew. So I would definitely try and separate them into individual tiles like what I'm doing here. And so as you can see, I'm slowly getting darker, and I'm trying to go in rainbow order from, blue and then the teals and greens to the lighter green, and then the yellows, and then the light orange, and then the darker orange, and then the peachy colors, and then now I'm getting in with the pinks. So I did know that on this right side of the disco ball, kind of like how on the left side the main colors were green and blue, I wanted the main colors to be the pinks and the purples. So I saved a lot of space for that. And I did that on purpose because pink is my favorite color, obviously. And so I wanted to make sure that that was really shown, that the pinks had, their time to shine, literally. So I'm just, again, going in and trying to fill in all of these spaces and intermingle the colors and make sure that they're kind of overlapping the little sections. And so I'm going in with this lavender color, and I did notice that it got a little bit checkerboardy with that lavender, and the two purples are too similar. I definitely should have lightened or darkened one of them before laying it down. But then now what I'm doing is I'm going to take my fine liner brush, and I'm going to use white. I kind of water the white down a little bit so that it would spread and it would be easier to kind of get those fine lines with. And I'm not fully outlining each square. I'm kind of doing two little L shapes, and I'm doing the same shapes on every single square in the same spots on every single square so that it is super consistent and it looks like the light is hitting it. And in one spot I messed up, and that's where I put the little sparkle, and I was like, yo, I love this. So I ended up deciding when I'm done, I'm going to see if there's any other spots that I messed up, and I'm going to put sparkles there. And so I'm just going and doing those little L shapes, and I'm making sure, again, that I'm doing it in the same spots on each square in every single square. Because if you don't have that consistency, it's going to look a little sloppy and like you didn't plan it out, and the light is not actually hitting the disco ball, and it's not mirrored, if that makes sense. So if you do mess up, again, with the white, you can, instead of doing sparkles or glares, you can just mix that color again and paint over it. Acrylic paint is very forgiving that way. It dries very fast. You can definitely paint over it and start over. Or, again, you can just do little sparkles. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to put a sparkle there and a sparkle there. And so I went and I darkened up the sparkles, added a thicker border of white, and then I'm cutting it out. And I'm trying to cut it out perfectly so that it is a perfect circle. And make sure that you're taking your time cutting it, because it will look very weird if you cut it out and it just is not a perfect circle. So this is the end result. Let me know what you guys think.